Welcome into the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee, and today's Wednesday, February 26th. I am your host, Josh Newberg, and we have another busy week of recruiting to cover. Big news, actually. So today, we are going to talk Tennessee's top targets on offense. Then we'll head down to Gainesville for some Gator talk with insider Corey Bender. And we're going to talk about the new On3 Rankings with Director of Scouting Charles Power. But first, let's talk some Tennessee recruiting, because with quarterback Faison Brandon on board, now it's time to build around him. And that's what we're going to focus on in this video. I got Austin Price from VolQuest, and we are going to talk some Tennessee recruiting. But first, volunteer fans, do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we need you to be subscribed. All right, let's bring in the great Austin Price. And Austin, you know where we're going to start. 5-star wide receiver Tristan Keys. There's been a lot of buzz around the Mississippi product, but it seems to me, and I know we got some important months coming up, but is Tennessee maybe the front runner of this recruitment right now?
I don't know. We'll see. I think they certainly were right there at the top, a couple months ago. I still think they're very much up there. You could say maybe they are even the top school, but I mean, when you're going to take official visits and see a bunch of schools this spring, I mean, being the leader now doesn't matter. It's about being the leader, 3 months from now, 4 months is the trigger. So, as for Tristan Keys, he'll be back here March 8th, Josh, and he'll be in here with Faison Brandon. You referenced Tennessee's, signal caller that's committed to them. They'll both be here March 8th, and that's why Tennessee's heavily in the mix here is his relationship with Faison Brandon. Faison's done a fantastic job working that relationship with Tristan Keys, and Tristan really likes Kelsey Pope, Josh Heupel, and Joey Halsley.
Yeah, and like you said, it's early for Tristan Keys, but it does sound good for Tennessee heading into these important months.
You'd rather be there now than trailing, right? Or playing a bunch of catch-up. Even if you say there are a couple other schools that are right there with Tennessee, you'd rather be in that pack than the pack that's trying to chase.
Without a doubt. So that being said, with Faison Brandon on board, it's no coincidence you got guys like Tristan Keys looking at Tennessee right now. Who are some of the other big names on the wide receiver board?
Well, at wide receiver, Tennessee's only going to take a handful of more players. And so, you look at, kind of where they're at, they really like what they have currently. Tyreek King, Tyron Evans. If they got Tristan Keys, I think Tennessee would be done. If they don't get Tristan Keys, there's a couple of other different areas they can go. They're going to shoot their shot at guys like Chris Henry. I think that's probably a bit far-fetched, but I mean,
sure.
They're going to certainly shoot their shot there and see what happens. But Tennessee likes a number of different kids. Kelsey Pope was out a lot during the month of January. I don't want to single anybody out because I don't want to feel like there's a pecking order, because right now I think it's Tristan Keys and then there's a group kind of below that.
Yeah, you got to see kind of who arrives in Knoxville in the spring for visits, and names start to kind of creep up the board once we get to March, April, and May. Let's talk about protecting Faison Brandon. Tennessee has one offensive line commit, in-state prospect Gabriel Ascenda. Who else right now is at the top of the offensive line board?
Well, in different positions, you got Grant Wise, Brett Collegier. Those guys are players that can play inside that I think really can help Tennessee out a lot. You have the Katoa kid that Tennessee's heavily involved with. Tennessee likes a lot of the offensive linemen in this particular class, and they want to be a player for Sam Greer. I think getting him here for visits is going to be a big thing. Mm-hmm. Darius Gray's another one that Tennessee would like to be heavily involved with. They went and saw him a bunch back in the month of January. So you're looking at both tackles and guards. The ones that really stick out to me are probably Wise and Collegier. They've been here probably the most out of anybody, but Tennessee's involved with the others I mentioned as well.
Yeah, and we've been talking about Brett Collegier on this channel for a while now. He's a big-time prospect out of IMG. Does he have an official visit locked in yet, or are we just anticipating one for the summer?
Just anticipating one for the summer. To my knowledge, he may have one. He just has not announced it, but they expect him to take an official visit here. He's been here too many times. I'd be shocked if Tennessee doesn't pick up an OB here.
Yeah, and I think offensive line recruiting really going to heat up for Tennessee this summer. Seems like a lot of these big-time offensive linemen are locking in summer official visits. I don't expect those dominoes really to fall maybe until the end of summer. We see some of these top offensive linemen start committing. So that being said, when's the next big visit weekend once this February dead period ends?
Well, it'll be March 8th, so not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. Matt Ray will have you covered. I will be on my kids' spring break, but Matt Ray will have everybody covered at VolQuest as Tennessee again will have Tristan Keys, Faison Brandon, a number of other highly touted prospects in for what is Tennessee's the kind of opening weekend. They have spring practice starting on the 7th, and then they have a big recruiting weekend on the 8th. So I would expect some to, if they can, to make it in here for that first spring practice on the 7th.
All right, Tennessee recruiting, it's about to get red hot. Let's talk some Florida Gator recruiting. Maybe no other team was hotter than the Gators on the trail when the 2025 cycle ended. 2026 is here. The Gators only have 2 commitments, but Will Griffin, the quarterback out of the state of Florida, is the centerpiece of this class, and there's more on the way. In this video, though, we're going to focus on the top targets on the defensive side of the ball. We always talk offense here at the On3 Recruits channel when it comes to the Florida Gators, but today we're talking defense, and I got Corey Bender from Gators Online. He's going to be here to do it, but before we get going, Gator fans, do me a favor and hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We need you to be a part of it. Jump on board, hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in Corey Bender, Gators Online. We're going to start with the big man, defensive lineman Vodney Cleveland. He was a Bama commit, no longer. And this is one of those weird things where he was committed to Alabama about 2 months ago, and he named his top schools. Now he's no longer even considering Alabama. So the Gators are in there, number 11 defensive lineman in the country. Who's the top competition for him?
Yeah, Josh, I think right now you got to look at Florida and Auburn as the schools trending up as recruitment. You can make an argument that Florida is probably the hottest team as recruitment. They host them 2 times over a 3-week span in January. Plans on getting back to Gainesville in March, and we first reported yesterday he's just now locked in OV for May 30th. And Florida's really surging with them. I think a lot of that has to do with the hospitality, just that home like Philly has in Gainesville. It's always the first few things he mentions when he comes to campus. Billy Napier is playing a big role. Gerald Chapman, the defensive line coach, and Florida has a few other defensive line assistants that are very active in recruiting. So there's a group, a host of Florida coaches that are really making them a priority. And I think it's going to be a kid that's probably going to take his time with recruiting, especially after decommitting from Alabama. But as of right now, I mean, you have to really like Florida's chances. And when we were up there on campus in January too, when we were interviewing him, Florida came up. Florida was actually like sitting right by us, watching us interview him, like very interested in seeing what the kid had to say. So it's a guy they're very invested in. So I think Auburn, they're the in-state school, so I think they're going to get my campus quite a bit for the next several months. So I think that's key as far as a momentum standpoint. But I think Florida, it's not too far from home. They've gone on campus, 2 times over the last month, and then obviously an OV and a spring visit are on the way. So Florida's sitting in a really good spot for him right now.
Yeah, hey, it makes it a little bit more easy when you're recruiting one of these top Alabama kids and the Tide are not in the recruitment. So Auburn, Florida, heads up. We'll see what happens here. Let's move on to the number 1 linebacker for On3, number 3 on the industry rankings, Isaiah Williams, 6'1", 215, and it seems like this one is coming down to UF and Bama, but he's from Leesburg, Florida, which is right outside Gainesville. So who do you give the edge to right now?
It's funny. So Alabama, he said was his leader when we spoke in late January, and then we spoke to him this past week, and he said Florida and Alabama are tied right now. But at the same time, Florida was a school he loved growing up. Obviously, Robert Bala, he's one of the new linebackers. He's the new linebackers coach at Florida. He's obviously making a top priority. Right when he got on staff, he started hitting him up right away. He's trying to establish that relationship. Ron Roberts, who's obviously co-DC, he's playing a big role as far as recruiting Billy Napier. And this kid grew up a huge Florida fan. And like you said, Josh, number 1 linebacker in the country is On3. This past weekend at the Under Armour camp in Orlando, he ran a 4.45 in the 4.4 range at just over 200 pounds. So really good athlete, had over 100 tackles this past year. Played in the Under Armour All-American game as a junior. Obviously that's a new thing where juniors can play in it. And regardless of class, he was one of the best linebackers in attendance. So I think with him, he wants to make a commitment over the summer. I don't know if that's going to happen. Remember, this is a kid that's already made 3 commitments: Syracuse, Louisville, and then Florida State most recently. Sources told us, back in the fall, he wanted to commit to Florida. At the time, Florida kind of pumped the brakes. They kind of wanted to evaluate him, kind of learn more about the kid, and not go into the situation. He's coming off 2 decommitments at that time. And then obviously a few months later, it was Florida State that lost him in the class. And that was more just because of Florida State's season. But right now, he's going to take 5 OVs. He has a lot of spring visits scheduled. But I think if Florida keeps their foot on the gas, I think it's a guy they can definitely get in the class. I think Malik Morris is another kid out of Lakeland High, who obviously has very high interest for Florida. If Florida can somehow land both those guys, it would be one of the best linebacker classes nationally. But with Isaiah Williams, big-time athlete, productive, and I think right now you have to maybe probably give Florida the slight edge over Alabama.
Nah, that's a big recruitment. All right, now let's talk about defensive lineman Jarraylen McCoy, and he's the number 4 player in the state of Mississippi. How did UF get so involved in this recruitment?
Yeah, it's interesting, Josh, because he hasn't been to Gainesville yet. But when I spoke to him a few weeks ago, he said Florida's number 2 on his list, and a lot of that's just because how hard Florida's recruiting him. They're really putting the full court press on him. He's a big kid in the trenches, athletic for his size, and he was actually going to be on campus in January, but in Mississippi they had a bunch of snow that came in during that time, so he couldn't leave the airport. So his visit got canceled last minute. But Florida still put their foot on the gas pedal, making a top priority. I think Ole Miss, the in-state school, they're getting a lot of buzz right now. But when I spoke to him, man, he had a lot of OVs set, and he said, hey, those are just my June OVs. I'm going to take USC, Oregon, a lot of other schools in the fall. So a host of schools are going after this kid, and it sounds like he's really considering all these schools too. Yeah. But for him to say Florida's number 2 on his list early on without taking a visit, and obviously daily contacts happening with Florida. So Florida's in a good spot. It's just they have to get on campus and solidify their top spot. But number 2 on his list right now, and probably right now, Ole Miss is the school probably right above Florida. So we have obviously a long way to go, but Florida has really established a footprint with them, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, like you said, a long way to go there. Now, let's talk about defensive lineman James Johnson. We're going to finish with this one because he's one of the biggest movers in the recent On3 rankings update. Moved over 100 spots, number 14 overall. James Johnson's recruitment is absolutely blowing up. Can the Gators keep him in state, Corey? That's the biggest question right now.
Yeah, I think they definitely can, Josh. I think overall, Florida's probably been the most consistent. They've got him on campus probably more than anyone. And this is a kid last year when we were in Gainesville. You were waiting for interviews, outside the facility. He was one kid before Florida offered that they were always talking high about the Florida staff. You would hear them talking, saying, hey, James Johnson, man, he's a dog. He's a big-time player. And that's before he was even nationally ranked. Obviously, they're on to something because now he's the number 1 defensive lineman nationally with On3. So Florida's been involved for a long time. He's one of the first prospects Billy Napier got on the road to go see. Gerald Chapman, who we spoke about before, the defensive line coach, making him a top priority day in and day out. I think Florida's just to keep doing what they're doing. Obviously, he has a long list of schools. You got Miami in the mix, Georgia, Penn State, Syracuse, Illinois. Another kid who has OV set with several schools. All those schools all the schools I just mentioned have OV dates set. He'll be at Florida June 13th through the 15th. So I think what's good in that regard is that, Florida will be one of the last schools to kind of make an impression after that long list of OVs. But overall, it's just he's very comfortable with the staff. It's another kid that just when he speaks to them, it's not even really about football as much anymore. It's just about reconnecting, growing those personal relationships, and that's largely because Florida got involved early. So when you kind of break down all the guys that we mentioned, it's really the relationships with a lot of these kids. And even Isaiah Williams, just kind of go back to him real quick, who we just mentioned, the linebacker. When I spoke to him over the weekend, he said he wanted to make Florida his last OV just because that he respects that staff so much. I don't know if that's going to happen, if he's going to switch those dates, but just to kind of connect everything right there, Florida's doing a good job of kind of really establishing relationships with these top kids.
Yeah, and the results are about to start rolling in. As soon as the dead period ends, we'll have visits, then official visits in the summer, and that's when the Gators really get cooking. So UF fans, talk to Corey Bender and I. How are we feeling about some of these defensive targets? Who do you think is the most important name on the board? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk a little Nebraska recruiting. The Cornhuskers, they won their first bowl game this offseason, first one since 2015. So the Huskers are rolling, and they're doing so on the recruiting trail as well. They signed in 2025 the 21st ranked class in America, and there's some guys on this list that are going to play early. So we got On3 national scout Cody Belair to help me out on this video. But first, Nebraska fans, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button to the On3 Recruits channel. All right. Let's bring in national analyst Cody Belair. And Cody, when you look at the offensive side of the ball for Matt Rule's 2025 signing class, who do you think has a shot to make some early waves on the field?
Yeah, the running back position, Josh, is one that's going to look quite different in Lincoln next season with names like Dante Dowdell, Ramir Johnson, and Gabe Irvin no longer in the mix. So who's going to get touches in the ground game outside of Emmett Johnson? And unless Nebraska addresses it in the portal this spring, it's looking like it's going to be one of the true freshman backs, Jamarian Parker or Connor Booth. I mean, Josh, this Cornhusker backfield's losing 200 combined carries this year. So I don't think it's out of the question that both of these freshmen could see roles in the Nebraska offense next season, with Jamarian Parker being more of the home run hitter, dynamic option, and Connor Booth being more the sledgehammer, between the tackles, ground and pound type of back. But I think both of these guys have a chance to be contributors to this Nebraska offense to some degree next season.
They could really help out on offense, but what about on the defensive side? Who's going to contribute early there?
Yeah, the Nebraska defense took some serious hits in the transfer portal. And yes, they did their fair share of damage themselves to get some quality players back in the mix. But that means there's going to be a ton of competition in the spring, summer, and fall camps for playing time. And that bodes well for two 2025 signees, including On3 top 100 defensive lineman Malcolm Simpson and top 150 linebacker Dawson Merritt. These two guys are physically ready to go, with Malcolm Simpson standing in at 6'3", 260 pounds with an 80-inch wingspan, and Dawson Merritt coming in at 6'3", 220 pounds, also possessing an 80-inch wingspan. I mean, these guys look like absolute creatures walking into that building, and they are tremendous athletes. Malcolm Simpson has one of the better dunk packages I've ever seen from a defensive lineman in quite some time, and Dawson Merritt was consistently screaming off the edge on his high school tape for all 4 quarters. So I have a hard time seeing these guys not competing for spots in the 2 deep when they walk on campus, but both could be potentially fighting for starting spots when all is said and done.
Now, not everybody from this 2025 class is expected to come in and make a early contribution. I mean, Matt Rule, known for his development. There's going to be some guys that we don't see as freshmen. So who's somebody that you think, maybe not as a freshman, but will end up having a great career in Lincoln? On3 is honored to announce the next stop of the Next Greatest Generation Tour at Peru High School in Peru, New York. In partnership with the Army National Guard, we are proud to recognize Peru High School as a Team of the Year for their outstanding commitment to community service and for hosting the inaugural Battle of the Blues flag football game. The impactful event brought together Peru alumni and local New York State law enforcement in a charity flag football tournament, raising crucial funds for pancreatic cancer relief and for the Peru Central School District scholarship funds. The event was dedicated in the memory of New York State Police Captain Chris Garrow, a beloved local hero who passed away from pancreatic cancer in June 2023, a loss that continues to inspire the community. The Peru football team played a pivotal role in making the day a resounding success, demonstrating leadership both on and off the field. Their dedication to serving the community was also evident throughout the event, uniting alumni, law enforcement, and local supporters for a great cause. In a particular moving tribute, Maggie Garrow, Captain Garrow's daughter and the team's kicker, will be present to accept the award on behalf of the team, symbolizing the personal connections and enduring legacy of this special initiative. Please join us in congratulating Peru High School on this well-deserved honor. We look forward to celebrating their remarkable accomplishments and the community spirit as part of the Next Greatest Generation Tour.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me because there's a couple guys we feel really good about with their long-term projections. You know, guys like Pierce Mooberry and Cade Pierchak, but the most intriguing prospect in this Nebraska class by far is Jeremiah Jones, who we have verified at 6'4", 3/4, 220 pounds. And Josh, this guy quite literally did everything for his high school in Kentucky, where he was playing quarterback, playing receiver, safety, linebacker. I mean, this guy did it all and has fantastic movement skills to match. So I know that this is a guy that Nebraska has on the roster as a receiver, but he's just so freaky with such exciting measurables that I cannot wait to see what he becomes for this Nebraska team, whether that's as a receiver or a tight end, or even if he moves over to the defensive side of the ball. At some point, I don't know what he's going to be, but when a freaky human steps in Lincoln, you got to take note of it.
All right, Nebraska fans, talk to Cody and I. Some great information there, but we want to hear from you. Who are you most excited about from this Nebraska signing class? Let us know. We got a new rankings update, and in this video, we're going to talk about the newly minted 5 stars. There's 2 of them in this one, and the big movers. I got Director of Scouting and Ranking Charles Power here. We're going to break it all down, but guys, before we get going, smash that subscribe button for me. All right, Charles, let's start with the new 5 stars, and the first one is quarterback Diabell, committed to Texas. I think people were expecting this one, but why is Diabell a 5-star now?
Yeah, Josh, not a huge surprise. Diabell was our highest rated 4-star in the last update. Since that update in October, he played some of his best football down the stretch prior to going down with an injury early in the playoffs. I think Diabell showed just immense improvement. He's a precision passer, showed the ability to rip off long runs against top competition. Just a guy who has a complete game at quarterback, and we could see him maybe pushing for QB1 before it's all said and done.
Another one is edge Carter Meadows. He goes 6'6.5", 225 pounds, out of Washington, D.C., attends Gonzaga High School. What do we love about Carter Meadows?
First off, I think you have to start with the measurables. This guy's an absolute unit. I mean, he is, like you said, he's 6'6 plus, 225, elite length, 35-inch arms, huge hands. We could see this guy maybe being like a 270, 280 pounder before it's all said and done, Josh. And at that size, he has outstanding movement skills, great bend, can really run, good power, good play strength, and I think he's just scratching the surface of his immense potential. A guy who's going to need to continue developing as a player, but his upside is as high as anyone in this cycle.
All right, let's get to some of these big movers, and we're going to start with the big man, Felix Ojo, out of the state of Texas. He's 6'7", 275 pounds, was ranked as the 19th best offensive tackle in the state or in the country, but I'm assuming he's moved up some in this ranking update.
Yeah, Felix Ojo has really come on in the last year. He's a guy who's younger for the cycle, so kind of makes sense that there's been some physical maturation and just progression, and he has really taken off. He had an outstanding showing. He was the On3 MVP at the Under Armour Dallas camp maybe like a week ago, and it just has great play strength. He has a lean frame, length, and is a guy who really kind of reminds us a little bit of Michael Fasusi last year, Josh. Just a powerful, physically developmental type of offensive tackle with a ton of upside. He is now a top 10 prospect for us, and given the progress he showed, his rise might not be done. He's a guy who I think we're just very bullish on, just the overall upside and the progression he's made.
Well, that's a name to remember. Another name to remember in the trenches is James Johnson out of North Fort Myers. We've been talking about him a lot on this channel because he's being recruited way over his ranking. Well, maybe not now because he's a big mover up, but James Johnson was at the UGA Junior Day, Florida State. He's been all over the Southeast, and he's highly coveted. 6'2.5", 285. He's a big mover for us.
Yeah, when you look at James Johnson as a prospect, the college attention he's getting certainly makes sense.
Right.
There's just so many positive indicators in that really contribute to him being our #1 defensive lineman in this ranking. He is highly productive. He had 29 tackles for loss in just 9 games. This is a guy who is kind of an electric athlete. He lives in the backfield. Think of like kind of an attacking 3 technique is like his style of play. Very powerful. He is an outstanding multi-sport athlete. He has a 57.5-foot shot put throw. I mean, just kind of like eye-popping numbers there. He's young, also younger for the class. Could be a 2027 prospect. So a guy who it kind of makes sense that this is a kind of a late rising or relatively late rising prospect, at least at this point in the cycle. A guy who has so much, like positive attributes that we look for at the position, and really is kind of an upfield pass rushing kind of dynamic in interior defensive lineman.
Yeah, and his recruitment, like I said, reflects that. All right, now we're going to hit on 2 names that were in the 2027 class until recently. These are reclassifications up to 2026. We're seeing way more of this in these 2 prospects. Running back Xavier Crowell out of Alabama, in tight end Mark Bowman, who's from California. No surprise that they're big movers because they just recently removed themselves from the 27 class up to 26. So why do we like these 2 guys so much?
Yeah, Josh, at 2 positions that are very strong in this cycle, Xavier Crowell and Mark Bowman have put themselves kind of in the top 3 at their respective positions. Crowell, I think, you have to start off with just the size and speed combination. He has good size. He runs in the 10.8s in the 100 meters and had a fantastic 2025 season, over 1,900 yards, 31 touchdowns while leading his team to a state title. I think he also shows great contact balance, just a high tackle, like high percentage tackle breaker, and shows the ability to hit the home run. So really like what he brings to the table, just kind of as a well-rounded skill set at running back. And Josh, Mark Bowman, I think, is the best route running tight end prospect I think I've seen in my time of doing this.
Wow.
He can really, really separate. His change of direction is like truly elite. A guy who moves like a 5'9", 5'10" slot receiver, and he's 6'4", 215 pounds. So just so much to like there. His skill set is very translatable. He's a guy who's going to need to continue getting bigger and stronger, but just the ability to create separation in short areas with his shake and wiggle is really unique, I think, among young tight end prospects.
All right. There's a lot of big movers. There's a lot of ranking updates. You guys can go to the front page of on3.com and see all the articles, see all the updates. But there's one more big mover that we got to talk about, and that's quarterback Bo Bentley. He started for the first time this past season, and he's getting traction after leading his team to that state title. Visits set to LSU, Ohio State, FSU, Oklahoma. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. What do we like about quarterback Bo Bentley?
Yeah, Josh, Bo Bentley, like you said, meteoric rise, first-year starter, led his team to a state title, highly productive, over 4,100 yards, 63 touchdowns, and just has a well-rounded game. Strong arm. He's a power runner between the tackles, a guy who you can really kind of mold your offense around. He can just do so many things. There's a lot of scheme versatility there. And I think given the level he played in just his first season as a varsity starter, playing strong competition in the state of Texas, I think is really encouraging. We got to see him all week, at the Navy All-American Bowl in January. We were able to see a lot of juniors at these games now. So that was enlightening to see him. And I think when you go back and watch the film from his junior season, we feel like he kind of stacks up in that what's a pretty crowded second tier of quarterbacks after Jared Curtis and Diabell. And he puts himself kind of into that like top 100, top 75 range. And it makes sense why he's being heavily recruited by a lot of top programs.
All right. So we'll have another ranking update probably during the summer.
We'll have one in the spring and then a big one in the summer.
So there's more coming. We're going to add more 5-stars, but you guys talk to us. What do you think about these newly minted 5-stars and the big movers from the most recent update? Let us know. Comment section below.